Welcome back to another educational video for International Wine and Food Society, Birmingham, Alabama chapter. We are your hosts, Drew and Drew the...
No.
Today we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite wine regions, which is Alsace. And there's a couple of really fun things to note about Alsace. It's right across the border from Germany, in France. Right now it's part of France. Of course, historically, the region of Alsace has changed hands pre-World War I, then after World War I, and then back and forth. So what's really kind of interesting is listening to some people that are from the region talk about the fact that their grandfather spoke German, their dad spoke French, they speak back and forth.
There's a regional Alsatian language, and yes, while the older people are really the only ones speaking it, it is a combination of French, German, and Hebrew. And it just is a weird kind of variation where if you hear somebody speaking it, you think that they're speaking in tongues a little bit. If you speak French, you're like, I kind of understand what they're saying. If you speak German, you kind of understand what they're saying. But it's also weird words thrown in there, and you're like, what's going on here? So definitely a rich cultural area. If anybody ever wants to look on a map, we'll put one up. The region we're talking about is a very straight line going from Strasbourg in the south up near the towns of Colmar and Celestat. And for those historical buffs out there, it's really, like you said, on the other side of what we would consider the Maginot Line from World War II. That's kind of where that part was. During the occupation, it was clearly in German hands again, and then kind of has gone back. So very similar to kind of how Alto Adige in Italy has a lot of Italian and Germanic kind of street signs.
Right.
The same thing you're going to find in Alsace. And also the food there, very Germanic in style, much more different than the kind of food you would get in the center of France. A lot more Germanic, a lot more kind of cured meats and cheeses, that kind of thing.
And if I'm not mistaken, Alsace has more Michelin-starred restaurants.
Right.
Is it per capita or per square mile than anywhere else on Earth?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but it's definitely like mind-blowing how much quality restaurants come out of that area.
So one thing that I do want to talk about really quickly, and we don't have any of them here because they're very highly allocated. There's not a lot that comes to the U.S. market in Birmingham and Alabama as a whole. But one thing that is really fantastic when we look at Alsace is there are some what are called Grand Crus. So we are going to, very quickly, we're going to touch on what grapes can be considered for that classification. And yes, there are some single vineyards, or the vineyards that are classified in that. And we'll give you a couple of names of ones that you can be on the lookout for here. Actually, pretty soon, those wines should be hitting the market for you to check out. So first and foremost, when we talk about Alsace, what grapes are we even talking about? The big one we know is
Riesling.
Ta-da! Which,
so we obviously, more so than what we would cover in, say, a German kind of class, Alsace has a lot of diverse varietals within that small region. The main ones, though, that you're going to think about are Riesling, Gewürztraminer, there's Pinot Noir, there is Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc, there's Sylvaner, there's Auxerrois, there's all kinds of small Muscat, there is Chasselas. So a lot of these are smaller, less planted white varietals that will go into a blend like the one we have here, but are definitely part of the Alsatian kind of grouping of wines.
And what's cool is that we also see, we do see some American producers that are playing with, that are in Oregon in particular,
right.
Because of climate similarities, that are playing with some of those really cool
Alsatian varietals.
Great varietals, that
right.
Things like the Chasselas and things like the
there's
Muscat,
some Auxerrois as well.
which is absolutely phenomenal that we do have some domestic producers that are doing some similar things. Again, the wines of Alsace are distinctly Alsatian. I would say that one of the defining characteristics is the acidity.
Yeah.
That is something that we find. The wines are bright, they're fruity, but that not quite, I wouldn't say like bracing acidity, but certainly the higher acid levels, which make the wines so special when you pair them with food. So hopefully what you get out of this is a couple of tidbits that when you're going to the store and you're looking for something to have with food, which will cover some types of foods as well, something that you can get excited about and find that maybe you haven't experienced yet. So real quick, back to the Grand Cru topic. What grapes can be considered for a labeling that says Grand Cru?
And I might need your help on some of these, but for sure, Gewürztraminer and Riesling, and I want to say Pinot Gris as well.
Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc,
as well,
I believe, are the only four that can be. Now, granted, you could plant whatever else you want in some of those vineyards, such as Mombourg, or you can plant whatever, but you cannot, like, you can't plant Sylvaner and Chasselet and Mombourg and call it Grand Cru Sylvaner. That is not something you're going to be able to do. There is one thing that we do know about Europe is they are a little more strict, and they definitely adhere to those wine laws and those labeling things. And again, it's more of an identity for ways to protect the integrity of the appellation.
Sure, and the tradition of the tradition of the industry and that kind of stuff. So we've got some really, like you said, with the Grand Crus, you see some of those come out from time to time. You won't see a whole lot. Some great producers like Weinbach, Schrimpbach will have some as well. We've picked some wines though today that you can find at a local retailer shop that are great money for the value. Kind of give you an introduction to Alsace, to kind of try what those styles would be like before you kind of graduate up to the ones that command a higher price point, right?
Because for sure those, the interesting thing is like wines like these can certainly age for several years.
Sure.
Now, granted, when we start talking about some of those Grand Cru Alsatian wines, 30, 40 plus years, absolutely no problem. And again, it's because of those acid levels, because of the fruit, just all working together. So the first thing is, which is really cool, I will be honest with you, I actually did not know until several years back, once I started with International, that Alsace made sparkling wine.
So they would call it Cremant d'Alsace, and it's made in the same style as Champagne, but because it's not from the region of Champagne, can't call it that. So what they labeled it is as Cremant d'Alsace. Now you can have Cremants that are made from different varietals. This one is a Pinot Noir rosé. So this is from Jean-Baptiste Haddad. Really great. As you can tell from the color, it's going to have really good acidity. The fruit's going to be more in the kind of strawberry cranberry kind of realm, but not sweet. It's going to be dry style rosé.
And that indicator also is on the bottle where it denotes brut.
Right.
So again, brut referring to the amount of sugar that's added in the winemaking process.
The dryness level. Yeah.
Correct. So.
Right. So really great, intro sparkler, goes with a lot of good foods, and again, the retail here is in the mid-20s. So nothing that's going to break the bank, but you have a really good idea of something that's kind of cool and not seen a whole lot of from Alsace.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, for me, this is one that is, this is such a good, and again, I feel bad even saying that I'm going to give it a season, but I absolutely love this wine in particular, this rosé, during the summer because of those fruit flavors that you mentioned, that it evokes the strawberry, cranberry, those type flavors to me. This wine is absolutely spectacular by itself. That said, because of those kind of bright red fruits, this wine is also, we had this at Thanksgiving last year, oddly enough. So with the turkey and with some cranberry sauce and whatnot, this was an absolutely beautiful pairing. So this to me, we've definitely graduated up a little bit from, your typical shelf level of like, Prosecco and Cava. Like we're definitely taking a step up, and you get a little bit more of a distinction. And obviously, the winemaking style here is pretty unique. So the next wine, the reason that I wanted to talk about this one is this is a lot of times what we see coming out of Alsace, especially in the sub-20 price range, is where we actually do get these wonderful blends.
Right. And so we'll get some varietals in here. A lot of times they're on the back of the label. Sometimes they may not be. But what we were talking about here is some of those lesser-known varietals you might not be familiar with. You'll look at and go, is that the grape? Again, Auxerrois, Chasselas, Sylvaner. These are wines that have, for the most part, similar characteristics, and that's why they are blended well together. And so what we're talking about is slightly acidic, kind of has this little bit of like a similar to a Gewürztraminer, like a little bit of white pepper aspect going on, and that kind of more appley kind of fruit to it than say ripe mango or tropical fruits or anything like that, no oranges or that kind of thing. Yep. So what you get is a really nice white blend that you can pair with those kind of spicier dishes, with seafood especially, but also kind of and again, think about the food coming from the region and the wine coming from the region is on purpose, right? So think, those kind of Germanic flavors. Think, sausage and kraut. Love Alsatian wines with that kind of food.
Like bread and mustard, like a grainy bread with some good, thick, grainy mustard.
Some, cheeses that from that area, to a certain degree, like a pate or something like that, that has a little bit of a fat component that you want to cut into it with that acidity. Really good options.
And we talked about in our German wine video that, certain specific cheeses. I would say, to me, if you're going down the road of Alsace in particular with some of these, for like let's call them a field blend for sake of argument, these type wines are where I feel like we can get into some of those something that's got a little bit more age on it, like a 6-month cheddar. Certainly Vermont white cheddar would be absolutely outstanding with this. Some good English cheddars would be good. I definitely think we can get into the Munster, the Swiss cheeses, stuff like that. Gouda would be outstanding with this. And then, to me, when I think these type wines from Alsace, the first thing that always comes to my head, it's one of my absolute favorite dishes, is like blackened redfish, like the Paul Prudhomme famous, spicy redfish dish, redfish on the half shell, or something like a nice blackened snapper with kind of that seafood cream sauce over it. It's just going to be a match made in heaven. The last one, we do have this is a 100% varietal Riesling. So talk a little bit about what we can expect from Riesling out of Alsace as directly opposed to what we see from across the border in Germany.
So you're going to have some very huge similarities, right? Not only because of the terrain and the elevation in which these are grown, but also the mindset of the Riesling grape, because at times this has been German property. It's very similar, right? What we see typically with Alsatian Riesling, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, is a little bit of a drier style for the most part, unless you're getting into the Grand Cru realm, and then they will have some residual sugar to it. But at the kind of lower levels, you're getting a little bit drier style. You don't see as many Alsatian Rieslings at this price point. A lot of times that's kind of been dominated by the German market. So this one is from Pierre Spar, which is an Alsatian Riesling producer, also does some other varietals. What I really like about this is it's kind of that happy marriage between a super dry Riesling and a sweet Riesling, in that you're getting all those aspects of the fruit, the acidity, but the residual sugar is a little bit less.
And price point wise, when we talk about kind of entry tier into the Alsace category for Riesling, where are we looking at here? Because we know we're certainly less than, like we mentioned, the Grand Crus from people like Weinbach or Trimbach. So where can we usually expect these to kind of fall?
Mid to higher teens to start, and then it's going to go up from there.
And one thing that was mentioned again to touch on, when we see that drier style from Alsace, the winemaker is allowing that wine to ferment all the way out. The beauty about Riesling, when we have dry Rieslings and when we have the sweeter styles with residual sugar, is that continuity of high levels of acid, which again make the wine super spectacular for laying down for a period of time, or opening whenever you want, and having it with a variety of foods. So when we see wines like this, again, these to me are all in that kind of 3 to 5 year range of where they're going to be bright and fresh and showing really well. And then, of course, as you get up the chain of command, as it were, and you start getting into some of those higher end cuvées or Grand Cru things, that's where you're really going to see those price points creep up into the 40s, 50s, and 60s pretty easily. So we hope that you have learned a couple things about the Alsace region, and again, seek this region out. The wines are incredible. They're incredible food wines, and hopefully you enjoy them as much as we do. Thank you for joining.
Thanks.